Hello, good afternoon. And it's 5:15 p.m. in Singapore, and it's 4:15, I believe, in Vietnam. So this is the panel session, Supply Chain Innovation, Improving the Customer Experience. And in fact, this is the final session of the day. And as I'm sure as you know, in physical events, it's always a challenge to do the very last one of the day. You have people slipping away after several hours of watching presentations and listening to speakers on stage. So the three panel members today promised me that they're going to make this a very, very exciting session for you. So let's hope they keep their promise. Those panelists are, in alphabetical order, first names, Alvin Siow, who's the head of IS, Asia and China, at pharmaceutical company Santen. Alvin, in fact, has spent some years in Vietnam and speaks Vietnamese, and so maybe we'll get to hear some of that from him today. Nicole Tretwer is the head of logistics services Asia Pacific at Swarovski, the well-known jewelry company. She spent more than a decade living and working in Asia, including some time in Vietnam. Then, then we have Wolfgang Lehmacher, who's the advisory board member, Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society. He's one of those people who has a very daunting resume, very, very impressive. He's had held senior positions at the World Economic Forum, Geopost, Intercontinental, and TNT. He writes for Financial Times, Forbes, Fortune, and there's a lot more I could say about Wolfgang, but he's very, very well qualified and equipped to be with us on this panel today. So to the panel members, as we go into the first question, please feel free to talk more about your job roles or your experience that is relevant to this panel session today about supply chain innovation and improving the customer experience. So the first question, let me go to the first question. So customer experience is one of those phrases which is bandied around all over the place and probably means 100 different things to 100 different people. So for you, what does customer experience mean in the context of supply chain management? Alvin, would you like to take that first?
Yes. Xin chào tất cả. That's hello everyone in Vietnamese. So that's my
very good.
Thank you for this one, and I'll just talk a little bit about customer experience. As we know now, we are all in a digital world, and the digital world actually enable a lot of our e-commerce platforms. Most people are going through e-commerce platforms to do your purchasing, for your food, for anything right now during this COVID situation. And I think this greatly impacts our supply chain landscape and ecosystem. And that's where we are looking towards our innovations and automations in our supply chain for our warehouses, for our delivery person, for our sales, even for the internal manufacturers in terms of getting real-time data, getting a lot of data that is visible at the instance, at the tip of your hands through barcode scanning, through devices, through real-time locationing, through GPS on mobile devices, and various other technologies that we see right now that are helping us improve the customer experience, getting the product to your doorstep in a few days, paying it through cashless payment, through online payment systems, and of course, helping us to do any inquiries or refunds or anything, all through your mobile app. And I think that's where digitalization is affecting the whole supply chain right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Nicole?
Yes, thank you, Bob. So yes, I'm working here as head of logistics for Asia Pacific for Swarovski, and as a retailer, we're all about the customer or the consumer experience, as you can imagine. So I myself, I've had the privilege to live in Vietnam for almost 2 years. I was not able to go beyond the Xinjiao, but yes, it was a very, very good experience to understand what challenges you face as a consumer in the country and how companies on the ground respond in a very pragmatic way. What is customer or consumer experience for us? But at the end of the day, we're living in an age of instant gratification. And as such, I want to have the visibility as a consumer of when I receive my parcel. And I think this is one of the biggest gaps that we currently have in supply chain and the delivery of it. In some cases, we get time windows even, yes, in some markets, but in some cases, you get a span of a week and you don't know when or where your parcel will be dropped at your doorstep. We don't have that visibility at the moment in many countries, and I think this is where I think we're falling short in our consumer experience, especially in the online part of the business.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And Wolfgang, who's, by the way, located in Hong Kong.
Thank you very much, Bob. And it's great to speak on this panel with the other experts. I'm working with large companies, startups, but also academia and international organizations on improving the supply chain network and ecosystem. And there is no global supply chain network and ecosystem because each country has its own specifications. And when I look at customer experience, you can look at it from two perspectives, right? You can look at the frustrations the customer has. This is also an experience, or the delightment a customer has, which is an experience. At the end, what we all want is that the customer gets what the company promises. So that's a bit the context around customer experience. To measure customer experience, a good model is to look at the customer journey. So this is all the touch points a customer has when interacting with a business. It starts with the website. Do I understand the website? Is it clear? Is it in my language or is it in English, right? Or in Chinese? And it starts there. Then how is the whole ordering process, including the payments? So, and then when the order is placed, of course, I want to know when the shipment arrived. And that has already been covered by my fellow panelists. You would like to have it in 2 days. If it was promised in 2 days, you want it to have at your door and not at the neighbor's door, unless you have given the instruction that that is possible. And what frustrates me the most in the digital age, and this is where we live, is simply that when things go wrong, I'm totally lost. So there is a lack of customer service when things go wrong. I think the digital world works pretty well, but if it doesn't, it becomes a bit of a pain. And in supply chain, a lot of different parties are involved. So you get your pizza delivered. It's cold. You call the pizza shop, and the pizza shop is not my fault. It was the fault of the driver. You call the driver says, I got it cold already. So this is a bit the challenge in the complex world of supply chains. And I think that is the world we are living in. That is customer experience from the good side, from the bad side. And I think we will dive deeper in how can we fix it and make it the perfect experience.
Okay, thank you all that. I think we've got some good definitions there, a good grounding in terms of what does customer experience actually mean. So if we can delve a bit more into this topic, perhaps look at what are some of the specific ways we can innovate the supply chain to improve, to do what we want to do, which is to improve the customer experience. Alvin, would you like to expand on that point?
Yes, so just now I talked a little bit about how we do some scanning or even mobile devices, and I think that's where supply chain is automating a lot of this throughout the manual processes, which are done mostly on paper, right? In the past, you will get an order maybe through an email, through a phone, or through a fax. Right now, you get it and it pings right on your mobile devices, and that delivery person may pick up, for example, a pizza from the shop and have the address of where they need to deliver it to. And with all these devices that they have, that's helping the customer experience to get it faster, to get it hot when they want it within the 30 minutes that's promised by the pizza shop. And that's how all this innovation in the digital supply chain actually helps the customer feel that I'm going to get it in the promised time of 30 minutes, I'm going to have it hot, and I'm going to enjoy my pizza in the end.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nicole. So I'm not sure whether you're also going to talk about pizza or you're going to talk about jewelry.
Yes, no, Bob. I'm not going to talk about pizza, and I think it's a very good example though that Alvin made, right? So you're ordering your pizza, and in some services it tells you will receive the pizza in your 30 minutes, right? And then it arrives 1.5 hours later. So this is the kind of where I think what we need to improve and innovate, or where we still have a gap, is in the timely update of the customer, the consumer, about the whereabouts of the parcel. And it's not just about, now we're talking cross-border shipments here, so it's not just about telling them, okay, it's departed, okay, it's stuck in customs, okay, it's on the way, right? It's also about we're missing out on the opportunity in, for example, failed deliveries. How much do companies, service providers spend on failed deliveries just because the consumer or the customer is not home at the time the delivery arrives, right? And this is actually quite a hassle, and I think we underestimate how much cost this causes. And most of us have the privilege of having a mobile phone, at least one that is able to receive text messages, right? So I think the transparency for the consumer, especially in the last mile, when he's about or she's about to receive her parcel, would make some big changes. If I get the ping, okay, I'll be delivering today, and then on the day I get my ping, okay, I'll be delivering within the hour. I think that just gives me the possibility to either organize myself to be there or ask somebody else to assist in being there to receive that parcel. And it stops me from having to go to the post office to pick it up. So for me, the real time, and I think we always speak about real time, but it's actually never is real time, is it? The real time notification of the consumer in the last mile. I think that's one of those places where I think we really could improve the experience.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So it's really about using technology to provide supply chain visibility, is what I'm hearing. Wolfgang, what can you add to this from your experience?
Yeah, first I would like to confirm that and make it even stronger, the point that the new miracle device is the smartphone. So we became, I think, very acquainted and enhanced from the business side, but also from the consumer side by the mobile phone. So everything which is about customer experience has to include somehow the mobile phone. So a lot of people 5 to 10 years didn't believe in the mobile revolution, but it is there. So that's a big piece. And that is my interface with the digital world. Then comes the visibility piece, which is, in fact, it is the data dimension of the supply chain. Every single step should be mirrored in the digital space, which means data generated from physical devices, by assets in transit, or by assets moving the goods, is brought into usually the cloud and then analyzed. But here is a bit of a challenge. If you look at the number of data which is generated currently in a normal supply chain, it is just overwhelming. which means that the data is one piece, but the more important piece is in fact the analytics of that data. And as I theoretically can now get an information at any moment near real time, it's never real time, but it can be near real time, I cannot handle this, right, with thousands goods which have been ordered, etc., which means I need analytics that tell me not the pizza is still not picked up, or the order has still not been shipped, or is still held in customs. It needs to give me more than that. It needs to give me that information, for example, only if it affects my delivery time. Meaning, if I expect this in 1 week and it's still in customs, I don't mind. It still will be here in 1 week. So there have to be intelligence in there. And the third dimension which comes to my mind is how businesses can organize themselves. And they have now the possibility to be part of that whole digital ecosystem, have collaboration platforms, get information, early warning signals pushed on their mobile devices so that they can take action individually or collectively in a way we have never been seeing before.
Okay, thank you. So analytics to provide a level of intelligent information which will help the customer, improve the customer experience. So this is really about Vietnam today. So I know some of you have had a lot of experience in the country, in Vietnam. So let's talk about broadly, at least broadly, what do you find are the level of customer expectations in Vietnam when it comes to some of these issues that affect customer experience? So things like the lead times for delivery, things like on-time delivery, getting goods which are not damaged in transit. What is the level of expectations that customers have in Vietnam? And I mean, feel free to, who wants to take that question? I mean, this doesn't need to be like a school classroom, so feel free to answer that question. Who would like to answer that question? In terms of what are the expectations of Vietnam specifically?
Yeah. Let me start first. So I think the expectation in Vietnam is that a lot of things are done through smartphones also. However, it may not all be through a mobile app or other things. It may be through a text message, or it may be through a phone call. So if you take, for example, a largely famous electronics store over there, you may call the store to say that you need a toaster or oven or something that you don't have, and they would send somebody over to your place. And in Vietnam, I think as Nicole and Wolfgang mentioned before, the address is not always complete. They may be in alleyways, they may be in places that does not have a structured address or postcode systems. So how do they communicate with the consumer? Is still through a phone, but maybe through a level down rather than through a mobile app, through voice or through text. And that's where also it affects the supply chain, right? How would you then be putting these orders in? Would the delivery person or the salesperson be tracking an order online? Would they be available to process the order and process invoicing and payment? And largely also, I guess the Vietnam consumers are still not there on the digital payment efforts or even credit cards per se. So it may be still on cash on delivery, it may be on other kind of methods, financing or other things that they may have done. So those are some of the level of expectations in Vietnam, and I guess consumers in Vietnam are the same anywhere else in the world. They want it fast, they want it cheap, they want it immediate, and as earlier my colleagues mentioned, instant gratification, right? That's all what the consumer wants nowadays.
So do we have any other thoughts on this? Perhaps not. So
this is, sorry,
sorry.
With some echo in there, Bob. Yes, no, I have to say, so as a consumer, I was very, very impressed with Vietnam. Stepping away from the platforms and, your Zaloras, which then became Robinson, and your Lazadas, right? I think my most impressive experience was going into a white goods store, buying a washing machine, and the lady asking me if I would be home. So this is 11 o'clock in the morning, and the lady asks me at the delivery counters, 2 o'clock, are you going to be at home? And I'm like, yeah, 2 o'clock, but which day? Is it going to be next week, the week after, thinking that it would take forever? And she looks at me and says, today. So within 3 hours, and not in a very super sophisticated way, within 3 hours, that shop fulfilled the order and on time. And it was not late. And I was lucky enough to be in a street with a name and a number, but still, it was super fast. I have not been in a country where you could have such an express delivery included in the sale rate. So that was very, very impressive for me. So I think in Vietnam, people are just used to delivering in a very pragmatic way as soon as possible. And if I go to the shop and I buy offline, it is a common understanding that somebody will be available to deliver it in the afternoon. So this is actually quite a high expectation if you're coming from another market, if you understand my meaning. So, and yes, and it was not damaged. It was transported on a motorcycle, which was even more impressive, safety aside. But it was really, really very impressive. So I think you're used to what you get in the market. And in this case, it's a rather fast, pragmatic service and delivery.
So just picking up on that, Nicole, because we talk about Vietnam, but Vietnam is also quite a diverse country. I mean, you have the city areas, you have the countryside, you have the hillsides.
Absolutely.
So it's clear when we talk about customer experience, there would be different levels of expectations in those different parts of the country. Is that correct?
Yes, I would expect so. I think so. I think most of my experience centers around Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, right, which are the big centers. I would, for the offline from the offline business, I would not expect it to be any different in the smaller cities in Vietnam. But then if you are talking about a platform delivering into the country, into the far reaches of the country, yes. There, I think the expectations would be very different, of course, also in regards to lead time.
Okay. What about some of the other challenges when it comes to logistics and order fulfillment in Vietnam? Can you point out some of those challenges that still exist in Vietnam that are affecting? In the end, are affecting customer experience? Anyone who wants to
here again, I speak about the city. So I think one of the big obstacles at the moment is, of course, traffic. Traffic is quite heavy. So this is why also the delivery by motorcycle is so convenient, right? If you are driving a van or a car, it can be quite difficult to get through traffic on time. So you're just so much faster on a motorcycle. I think that's one of the challenges. So when you decide on your distribution network, on what kind of assets to have, right, you really need to think about this. And I think go as small and flexible as possible. Another thing is, I think we mentioned this one before, it's about the streets, the alleys, the side roads, right? Sometimes, the houses, the multi-story houses, where it's really, really important, I think, that when you develop your team, your local team, that you make sure you have the same drivers looking after a certain part, so that they become familiar with the territory. So pretty much like a postman, knowing, who's where and when, which is very convenient. So this would be two of these things that I have.
Okay, thank you. Wolfgang, if I can come to you, because I know you've had lots of experience in many different environments in many different countries. So perhaps you can tell us what Vietnam can learn from other countries that have maybe gone through a development phase, that have managed to improve their levels of customer satisfaction through superior supply chain performance. Or perhaps another part of that question will be, are such innovative supply chain management practices transferable? Can we do in one country what we can do in another? What are your thoughts on that, Wolfgang?
You're putting me in a very difficult direction. I think it can work both ways. So there are things the world can learn from Vietnam and countries like Vietnam and vice versa. What is definitely a challenge in the countries like Vietnam is potentially the density. So although Vietnam is one of the economic success stories of the last 30 years, it's still different to cover Vietnam than the city of Singapore or Hong Kong, right? So you have clearly coverage challenges. And it starts with communication networks. So you might have a mobile phone, but you might not have coverage. But still, you find similar situations in Germany, right? I was recently in the train and I had 1 hour. I had no internet connection, which is something you don't expect in such a country. So saying what I want to say is it becomes very specific. So definitely Germany has to improve its G4 4G coverage. But I think that Vietnam is doing, like most of the countries, a great job to satisfy the customers, and they do it within the context of their means. Bringing manual labor in where you need manual labor, right? Find innovative solutions which solve the problems specifically there. There are many countries which have no addresses. They have no addresses. It is about letterboxes. So that's where technology can help. There are developments to make location more precise, because even in a country like Singapore, Hong Kong, Germany, New York, if you have to deliver an order into a large office building with 5 entrances, you might have difficulties to get it there in the 30 minutes, which they promise in New York with Amazon Prime, right? You just struggle to find the right entrance, to find the person on the right floor, because the technology is not yet there, but the technology will be there. So my advice would be continue to work with the means which work in your country and drive with the maximum speed digitization, make sure that you have digital infrastructure, help people to afford a mobile phone, which is access to commerce, but also access to health and access to education.
Yeah, I may add on that. Actually, in my past implementation, due to 4G or 3G coverage, we had to look into some of the IT solutions to actually provide offline services on the devices itself. So the database of clients, or even an offline entry into a mobile phone for the order delivery is there when the connection is not good. So those are some innovations that, or considerations that you can put when you implement your IT systems, or your what we call like a trade or van sales person. And that's are some of those sharing that I like to bring to our attendees here. There are a lot of solutions that are real time, but consider it your what if scenario when you don't have 3G, and what's your workaround process. And as Wolfgang and Nicole mentioned, right, there are manual processes. There are the fallbacks onto the phone calls, the texts, and etc. Calling before you arrive, and all kinds of things. So those are things that I think when we do our projects, how we implement it, how we would go through an urban area implementation and a rural area implementation. A rural area, maybe you would have the major town that's serving the sub towns around that major town that will have the depot of the stock, and that's where you provide your distribution network. And those service levels may not be the 30 minutes that you have in the urban area. It may be a 4-hour delivery, or the next day delivery kind of thing. So as a person or a company yourself, you set the level with your customers depending on where they are, and that's help you in terms of making sure that your customer experience and expectation is met. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, do you have any final thoughts on this? I know you have Asia Pacific experience. Do you have any final thoughts on some of these learnings that we can transfer?
So I would have a question, what can the world learn from Vietnam about how to do customer experience? Yeah, so some countries could actually learn from Vietnam. So yes, from a technology and from a network point of view, I think Vietnam is getting there. They have made immense progress over the last few years, and they have done it in a pragmatic way with the means that they have. And I think that's very impressive. And I think well done.
Okay, thank you. Well, talking about mobile phones and visibility, I'm being told that we are supposed to wrap up on my phone. So I'm going to have to show my very deep appreciation to Alvin Siow from Santen, Nicole from Swarovski, and my colleague on the advisory board, Wolfgang Lehmacher, for their very good insights into this topic, which I think is something that we'll be talking probably about for a very, very long time indeed. So on this topic of supply chain innovation and customer experience. So once again, I want to thank you very much for giving your time today, and all the best. Thank you very much.